On May 2nd, Paul is swimming near the seacoast of France when he suddenly feels a strange movement of bubbles in the water. He looks up and sees clouds in the sky forming a mysterious circular ring and rotating. Paul does not notice that the same bubbles are slowly forming a circle around him as well. Within a few moments, the bubbles disappear. Sometime later at home, Paul tries to cook food but realizes that the kitchen tap is not working. He goes down to the basement to check the water heater, and his daughter Mia runs after him. Paul carefully closes the door so that their cat, Tofu, does not come inside. In the basement, Paul stays busy repairing things while Mia sits on top of the fish tank and plays with her toys. She says she wants more fish because she has only one, but Paul refuses and explains that life is already complicated enough with Tofu. When Mia comes to give him a tool, she suddenly gets scared because she sees a spider. Paul does not kill it and explains that spiders are useful and will not harm her. He then lifts Mia and jokingly calls himself a scary monster who is going to eat her just to make her laugh. While making her laugh, he sends her upstairs. When Paul stops to get a bottle of alcohol, he notices rat droppings behind the furniture. After dinner, his wife Elise plays music in the living room and starts dancing with Mia, teaching her that there is no right or wrong way to dance. When Mia falls asleep, Elise starts dancing with Paul. Slowly, the mood changes and both of them become playful. On May 5th, Paul suddenly wakes up in panic, feeling something strange in his body. He tries wearing different shirts, but every shirt feels a little too long. After returning tired from work, he has dinner with his family. Mia asks him to read her a story before sleeping, but Paul refuses, saying that he is very tired and will read it tomorrow. Mia reminds him that he said the same thing yesterday too, and feeling sad, she leaves the table. Elise scolds Paul for his behavior, and feeling ashamed, he goes to Mia's room and starts reading her a story. However, they argue about the size of a meteor in the story, and Paul leaves it unfinished, telling Mia to go to sleep. As he is about to leave, Mia gets out of bed and lies down on the floor, asking her father to join the game too. Finally, Paul agrees, holds Mia by her legs, and swings her a little. Mia laughs loudly, and Paul then puts her back into bed. By May 7th, Paul's shirts start feeling even bigger. Elise asks if he has lost weight, and Paul irritably replies that when weight decreases, the length of arms and legs also changes a little. Upset by his tone, Elise begins to think that something serious may be happening to his body. Paul finally decides to visit a doctor. After a general checkup, the doctor measures his height and says it is 176 centimeters. Paul is shocked and says he has been 180 centimeters tall since childhood. After asking a few questions, the doctor concludes that it may be an effect of aging, but Paul does not believe this. Later at work, Paul notices that his helmet keeps slipping off his head. He checks to see if he has taken someone else's helmet by mistake, but his own name is written inside. That night, Paul cannot sleep as the strange rotating clouds keep spinning in his mind. To tire himself out, he starts exercising, but Elise gently convinces him to return to bed. On May 20th, while taking a shower, Paul feels that the shower pipe now seems much higher. Suddenly, his wedding ring slips off his finger and falls down. He stares at his palm in shock and fear. When he goes into the kitchen, Elise notices that Paul has now become shorter than her. This time, he goes straight to the hospital. Doctors scan his entire body, test his blood, and run every possible examination. After a few hours, they say all the reports are normal, but Paul's height is now only 165 centimeters and his weight is 63 kilos. In just a few weeks, he has lost 15 centimeters and 10 kilos. The doctors admit they have never seen a case like this before and have no answers. They only say one thing for sure: the shrinking is continuing and may continue in the future. More tests follow, and in Paul's dreams, hospital blood and those strange clouds begin to appear together. After another frightening dream, he wakes up in the hospital feeling that he is only wasting his time and decides to leave. Back at home, Paul feels his shrinking body every moment. When he sits on a chair, his feet no longer reach the ground. Slowly, he starts distancing himself from his family and begins ignoring the calls coming from the hospital. After some time, Paul becomes so small that, while sitting on a chair, he looks like a doll. Elise suggests that they should change their house and until then, leave Mia with her grandparents. But when she asks Paul where they should go, he replies sarcastically, "Circus." Now, even the presence of the cat, Tofu, starts to scare Paul. Elise sends the cat outside and closes the pet door. By June 30th, Paul has become as small as a mobile phone. Tofu sits outside the window staring at him. It is raining, but the cat does not look away. When Elise brings some potential buyers to show the house, Paul panics and quickly hides under the bed. It hurts him deeply to hear people judging his beloved home as if it were just an object. After the guests leave, Paul starts yelling at Elise. He says that bringing people without telling him could have been dangerous for him, and he is also angry that Elise decided to sell the house without consulting him. Elise reminds him that she had already talked about this before, but Paul keeps shouting, "This is my house!" Then Elise tells him the truth. They have no income now. She does not know what else to do because Paul refuses to get treatment. Paul angrily responds that treatment is for sick people and he is completely fine. He does not want to become a laboratory experiment or a test subject. Elise also breaks down. When she shouts loudly, the force of her voice knocks Paul off the counter. She immediately apologizes and runs out of the house. Paul then looks toward the hallway and realizes that Mia has seen everything. On July 5th, Mia places Paul inside her dollhouse. Paul plays along, praising the little house and its features as if it were a real building. He asks Mia to play some music so he can dance with the doll. Mia smiles. After many days, a smile finally returns to her face. After this, Mia tries to play the monster game again, just like the old days. But now her voice and movements feel too heavy for Paul's tiny body. He panics, and Mia's smile disappears immediately. She understands and apologizes shyly. That night, Elise cannot sleep. When Paul comes near the bed, Elise stretches out her hand. Paul steps onto her hand and comes close to her. By July 30th, Paul is now barely a little bigger than a cork. He is making something using thread and a fishing hook when, from outside, the cat Tofu starts pushing the pet door repeatedly. Finally, the door opens and Tofu comes inside. Paul panics and accidentally falls onto the hook, injuring himself badly. Enduring the pain, he pulls the hook out of his stomach and removes his shirt to look at the wound, but he cannot treat it because Tofu has now gone into hunting mode. Paul grabs a needle and runs to save his life. Tofu chases him and he dashes through the dollhouse, trying to trick her, but Tofu jumps over it and continues the chase. Paul reaches the basement door and rolls under it to hide, but Tofu pushes her paw under the door and strikes him. He falls down the stairs, landing safely inside a box full of trash, but becomes unconscious. Sometime later, Elise comes home and sees the blood-stained shirt. Her heart sinks. At the same moment, Paul regains consciousness and starts shouting her name. Elise comes downstairs, looks around, but cannot see Paul or hear his voice. Tofu also comes near and starts growling. Elise turns to the cat and assumes, in anger and fear, that maybe Tofu has eaten her husband. She screams and chases the cat up the stairs. Paul angrily starts throwing nearby objects, but being ignored breaks him completely. By midnight, exhausted from waiting, he decides he must find a way to survive on his own. Using a nail, he cuts a piece of cloth to cover his body and makes a belt out of wire. Looking around inside the box, he finds a small hole and crawls out. Holding the needle, he moves toward the window, but freezes when he hears something moving in the shadows. Fear takes over him. Paul runs and climbs onto the water heater platform. The window is useless, it has a mosquito screen, but he drinks a little water and washes his body, paying particular attention to the wound. He does not have the courage to move further in the darkness, so he sleeps under the water heater, trying to find some rest in the quiet. The next morning, Paul wakes up to Mia's voice calling him. He runs toward the stairs, but they are too high for his tiny body. Using all his strength, he shouts Mia's name, but there is no response. Then he hears the sound of the main door and a car starting. His family has left. Paul looks around and finds a piece of chalk. On the floor, he writes his name, Paul. He searches in the space between the furniture and the wall and sees ants eating something inside a mousetrap. He scares them away using the needle, then drops a nail onto the trap. The first time, nothing happens. He tries again, and this time the trap snaps shut loudly. Now Paul has a large amount of cheese to eat. At that very moment, a spider appears above him. Paul bangs hard on the walls with the nail and the spider runs away. Paul then tries to make a hole in another box but fails. He goes back to the trash box and picks up a piece of cloth and a bottle cap, filling the cap with water. He soaks the cloth and uses it to soften the cardboard, then strikes hard with the nail. This time, finally, a hole is made. Paul crawls inside and sees a matchbox but cannot reach it because some large objects block his way. He seals the hole with rubber and tries to sleep. Voices come from above and then the light turns off. Paul starts thinking, who is in the house now? On July 15th, hearing sounds inside the house, Paul wakes up and shouts loudly. He makes noise using the nail and a paperclip to get noticed. The door opens, but people only peek into the basement for a moment, and then leave. Paul collapses onto the floor, feeling completely defeated. To distract himself, he starts scraping a bottle cork with the needle. After some time, alcohol starts dripping. He quickly fills a thimble and drinks it, eventually drinking so much that he throws up. From the top of the fish tank, he sees the spider staring at him. Completely drunk, Paul says to Mia's doll, "I will handle everything." He climbs on top of the fish tank. The spider looks at him for just 1 second and runs away. Paul laughs, feeling that he has won. But at that moment, his attention slips and the spider comes back, pushing him into the water. Paul falls in, staring at the fish, and tries to float up. But above, the spider is waiting for him. He goes back under the water, swimming with the fish, waiting for the spider to leave. After some time, Paul throws fish food into the water and even tries to taste it himself, but the taste is extremely bad. That night, when Paul is returning after filling his bottle cap from the water heater, he finds the same spider waiting for him under the fish tank. The spider slowly starts moving toward him. Paul immediately pulls out his needle and swings it, attacking so the enemy cannot come closer. He strikes the spider's legs many times, but the spider is not ready to give up. Paul runs and hides behind one leg of the furniture, but the spider immediately follows him. Finally, Paul keeps stabbing it again and again with the needle, and only then does the spider step back, yet it does not quit. It climbs up the wooden leg, trying to attack him from above. Paul quickly stabs it once more with the needle and runs away. The chase continues under the furniture. While running, Paul gets tangled in some wires and falls down. The spider climbs on top of him. Paul struggles with all his strength to save himself. At that moment, his eyes fall on some small wooden pieces. He picks up one and pushes it into the spider's eyes. Frightened, the spider pulls back. Paul shouts at it, and the spider, now scared, runs away and hides somewhere. After this, Paul makes a hole in the box again and finally reaches the matchsticks. But his tiny body is not very strong. After rubbing many matchsticks, finally one of them lights up. Now he can make a very small fire to keep himself warm. He eats cheese and talks to Mia's doll, telling it how much he misses his family. He says to the doll, "If you ever meet Mia, please give her my message." Days keep passing. To stay alive, Paul exercises, eats cheese, and sleeps inside the same box. On July 20th, hearing a sound, Paul runs toward the stairs and sees a man coming down. He starts shouting and waving his hands, but now he has become so small that the man's voice and the sound of his footsteps, even though normal, are unbearable for him. He covers his ears and hides behind the stairs. Suffering from a strong headache, he falls to the ground and starts crying. When the man leaves, Paul comes out and realizes that the fish is gone. Now he is truly, completely alone. On August 2nd, a mosquito enters the basement through the window and stares at Paul for a few seconds. He understands that he has now become almost as small as an insect. The mosquito flies away. Paul thinks, "Can I pass through the window net now?" He starts climbing the furniture. The journey is long and exhausting, but finally he reaches the top. With all his strength, he runs and jumps, landing on the bricks, and begins walking along the wall toward the window. On the way, he sees spider webs and realizes the spider still lives here. He moves very carefully so the web does not shift, but his elbow accidentally touches it. The spider immediately rushes toward him. Paul lowers his head, preparing to accept death. While crying from fear, he even urinates, which surprises the spider. Just then, a fly gets trapped in the web, and the spider leaves Paul to go after its prey. Paul starts moving again. After a long struggle, he reaches the window, but when he tries to pass through the net, he realizes his body is still slightly too big. He cannot get out. By August 7th, Paul wakes up to find an ant chewing on his leg. He kicks it away, and the ant gets stuck in the spider's web while another escapes outside the net. Paul realizes he has become so small that he can now follow it too. He moves quickly and at the last moment escapes from the spider. The two look at each other, and Paul thinks, has the spider also become alone now? A little later, Paul finds himself out in nature. The grass is much taller than him and water drops look like mountains. A butterfly flies by, creating a gust of air that touches Paul's face. For a few moments, they look at each other and then the butterfly flies away. Paul looks up at the sky. The stars are shining. He thinks about Mia, who might be, at this very moment, looking at the same stars. So friends, I hope you liked this video. If you liked the video, then like, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. Till then, bye.